Last week I said I would be a little bit further afield today, so I'm headed out now to head to Perth. It's heading in this direction. It's a little over a 5-hour flight, which I was thinking about. That's a third of the way to Los Angeles flying from Brisbane. So it's a fairly long flight that is ahead of me. Well, let's do this trip. Way back in the beginning, I had said that I travel quite often, and at that stage I had been, but since COVID has been around, I've done one interstate trip and no international flights, of course. So there's a little bit of excitement about this, and to be honest, I've kind of gotten used to not traveling, so I'm a little bit uncertain how it's all going to unpack as well. Top of all of that, I'm looking a little scruffy because typically I don't shave on a day that I travel, because I'm not necessarily connecting with anybody that an unshaven look will matter to. So that's the explanation of that. Let's see how this goes today. Here we go, off to Perth. We'll be connecting over the weekend. Talk to you later. I'm on the red-eye flight, so leaving just after 7:30 this evening, getting over there around 11, and so I am, and then coming back in the evening as well, and so I'm leaving the car at the long-term car parking facility rather than having my wife drive down and drop me off. So I'm here now. So there we go.
This bus is about to depart. Please ensure you are secure and that all luggage is placed in the racks provided.
Sites for requirements at your destination. Thank you.
I've walked alone, never seemed to go on, feeling lost and ashamed. I'm in chains, but soon to be.
G'day, I'm Roland Hearn, and this is a walk in the garden. Well, here I am. I'm in Perth. Arrived around 11 p.m. Last night local time, which is 1 a.m. Brisbane time. It was well after midnight by the time I got through their process for keeping track of the pandemic, and I got to my rental car and got to my hotel. So it was a pretty late night. It's been a beautiful, cool morning, waking up here in Perth, and so I decided for the walk in the garden to come to that place which almost every visitor to Perth is brought to either on their own or if they're in the company of a local. It's straight to Kings Park. Kings Park gives you a wonderful overview of the city of Perth, and you can see that here. Kings Park is still on a little hill. I believe it's called Mount Eliza. The early founders of the city were quite forward thinking, and they set aside this area from basically the beginning as a park. It ultimately became known as Kings Park, originally Perth Park, to commemorate the then king of the British Empire. But this is Perth. It's a beautiful city. It has the distinction of being known as the most remote major city in the world. It's a city of over 2 million people, and the next nearest big city is Adelaide, I guess, on the southern side of Australia, and then you go across to the east coast. It's As I said last night, coming across, it was a 5.5 hour flight by road from here. This park to my home is 4,300 kilometres. So it's quite a distance, and it is very remote. This beautiful park has many hundreds of hectares of reserved space, and there's beautiful trees and botanical gardens and memorials and all sorts of things in this park. It's quite beautiful. This area, the Swan River, and I believe the Canning River meets the Swan River, which is what creates that large expanse of water upon which the city of Perth is built. Was first seen in the 1600s by Europeans. I mean, the original Aboriginal settlers have been here for more than 37,000 years, and the first Dutch people that saw this area thought it was very impressive, but the Dutch really didn't think much of this part of the world at all, because there was no established trade. The Dutch were traders, and so they didn't do anything about this area. In the early 1800s, a French ship stopped off the coast here, and I think they put some people ashore for a bit. The English on the east side of Australia had been very worried about French settlement throughout the continent, and they wanted to make sure they had it all themselves. So early in the 1800s, they determined that they were going to establish a colony here in Western Australia. There was a convict settlement on the southern part of the country in a place called Albany, but this was the first free settlement. And unlike the eastern cities, Perth was established as a free settlement, and it was some time before convicts started coming at the request of the free settlers for a free source of labour. So by the 1850s, when the convicts were no longer sent to the east coast, they began sending them here to the west coast as a free labour source. But originally, Perth is in fact a free settlement. West Australia became a part of the Australian Federation in 1901. It was the last of the states to join, and the Western Australians have always seen themselves as something a little bit different or separate from the rest of Australia, which is completely understandable when you consider the space and the distance from here to the rest of Australia. But I can't look at a city like this and not be moved by the stories of the original people that came to this area. People on the east coast didn't have a lot of choice. As I said, it was a convict settlement. The soldiers and the convicts were sent here, and when they were sent here, they were told that 7 years they could come home. Of course, they had to pay their own way home, so many of them became free settlers, but they didn't choose to come here. Whereas to Perth, people chose to come here when there was nothing else here. And you wonder what drives people at that point in time. Of course, the opportunity to establish your own life as a free person and perhaps make your own wealth by being a part of something new is certainly the major motivation. And most of Perth's population growth came as a result of large finds of mineral resources, particularly in the early stages of gold at Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie. But it is that desire to make your own way, to make your own space, that speaks to one of the issues of our three foundational ideas. The idea that the search for meaning is a search for worth. I want my life to mean something. I want to make it the best I possibly can. I'll choose things that give my life meaning. Is a drive that most people are familiar with, And many of us will simply settle for the journey that life takes us along and constantly have that question, could I have done more to give my life meaning? But when you think about those original settlers, men and women, setting off to one of the most remote areas and quite dangerous too, recognizing that they were leaving everything behind and that decision could be fatal. So that drive to have meaning of our life is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly motivational. I want my life to have meaning. The idea, of course, is that meaning, having a significant meaning, gives our life a sense of worth. And the search for meaning is a search for worth. The struggle that my life has no meaning and has no worth is one that many people deal with significantly in their lives. In fact, I would suggest that all of us at some point in time struggle with that sense of, does my life have meaning? And this is where the significance of love and worth, being two sides of the same coin, join that idea of meaning, a search for meaning being a search for worth. Ultimately, a search for meaning is our innate struggle for our desire to be loved and valued, which I would suggest is ultimately best responded to by a relationship with the one that loves us more than we can ever know or imagine, and that means values us more than we can ever know or imagine. So when I think about a city like this, I think about what it means in terms of the human drive for worth and meaning and love. And I am reminded that our lives become their richest, become their best when we are loving as a result of being the recipients of the love of the Creator. Sitting here in this space, it inspires me, it warms my heart, and I look forward to ever pursuing the idea that my life is a search for meaning, is a search for love, is a search for worth, and that search is something that can be realized. Well, thank you for joining me today. I look forward to continuing our walk in the garden next week, and I'll be back on the east coast of Australia the next time we visit. But until then, you keep walking in your garden. See you then.